What is up, everybody, and welcome back. Today we've got the latest in the positive reaction video series. It's a series where Jeremy goes out into the YouTube wonderland and finds fencing videos that he thinks that I'll positively react to and that I would like to share with you guys. With all that being said, let's both watch this for the first time. All right, guys, today's video is titled How to Build a Horizontal Fence DIY. The channel is HomRenoVision DIY. It's an interesting subject. It's a question I get a lot, specifically about horizontal fences. As the time goes on, these fence styles are becoming more and more popular. So I'm interested to see how HomRenoVision does it.
We're going to be using traditionally a 5/4 inch by 6 inch lumber going horizontal across the fence. Around eye level, we're going to use a 2x6 just to have a little bit of texture and some pop. The way we're attaching our fence to our fence post is real simple. We're using the camo screw system, which is awesome because it comes in at an angle just off the rounded edge of the wood, and it keeps the surface screws out of the visibility.
All right, so that's interesting. So he's using a 5/4 board, which is similar to how we would do it. So when we build horizontal boards, I like to use 2x material, 2x6 or 2x8. Maybe some 2x4 to kind of throw in a little bit of variety, but 5/4 in the lumber industry is a nice quality board. One area that we differ in is, I would guess this is probably like an 8-foot tall fence or maybe even taller. We would definitely use a steel post. The problem with wood post is, and these look like treated pine posts, you can buy #1 clear grade, which is one of the highest grades of lumber you can buy. You could buy that in treated pine, and you still end up with warping and twisting to some extent. So for as much time and efforts going into this, a steel post upgrade might have been called for, but that would leave. So he's getting ready. It looks like he's getting ready to describe it's a hidden fastener system. In the fencing industry, a lot of guys call this like toe nailing. He's using, looks from the illustration, looks like he's using screws, but with a wood post, you can't use the hidden fastener system.
Rounded edge of the wood, and it keeps the surface screws out of the visibility. And once they're buried, a couple of decent rains, the wood will swell up and grow over the screw hole, and you'll never see another screw hole again. That'll allow this fence to last for about 20, 25 years before you start to see any signs of wear, and should be more than enough for them to enjoy it for a lot of years to come. So this is the camo screwing system. I saw this on the market a few years ago for the first time, but wasn't sure how it was going to perform. Tried it out on some real simple deck surface type things and was pleased with the result it gave. A little more labor intensive than you might expect as far as the screwing down of the floor is concerned, but it definitely outperforms a traditional surface screw to such a huge degree that you can definitely ask the clients for additional costs when you're doing this kind of a thing. So
yeah, so you'd want to take that into account. Yeah, he kind of glossed over it there, but it sounds like it's going to take longer, the camo system. I've never used the camo system, so I can't speak to it specifically, but it does seem like it'd take longer. So you want to factor that if you're a contractor bidding a job, you'd want to factor additional labor into your proposal.
I was down in Vegas 2 years ago at the trade show, international trade show for construction, and they had this demonstration. And so these guys from Camo were down there, and they've been driving around this little piece of deck that they built with the camo screws, and they leave it outside the shop. And on this decking, is half of it's done with the camo screw, half is done with surface screw. And as you would guess, pressure treated lumber, when it has surface screws, every one of the areas where the screw is starts to rot, because when it rains, it holds water there. So it's excessive wear at the screw head penetration.
So that's one area that, a fence is going to differ from a deck. So I understand the concept he's talking about. On a flat board with screws, it creates a dimple in the board that water can collect in. When we're talking about fence that's vertical, I haven't seen this in fencing where it rots prematurely at the fastener, where the fastener goes through the picket, whether it's a screw or a nail. So it might not be as much of a consideration on a fence than on a deck.
So the reason we do these videos is to help the do-it-yourselfers. So a lot of do-it-yourselfers don't have help around. So I'm going to show a lot of how to do it alone kind of tricks when you're working. So first of all, we're going to hang this first board, which I've already found with my level. It's the straightest board in the bunch, and I'm going to attach that to the fence. And I'm going to level it off till it's perfect. Then I'm going to use a string line to create the line that I'm going to build the rest of the fence on. But in order to do this, it stretches over 3 posts. So we have a center mark, 6 feet, set a screw, then all we got to do is walk over to the post and mount it. So when you're hanging a board, it's nice and simple. We're in the middle. we're gonna create a simple lever. Gonna mount that screw, take our level, set it on top of the board, and we're gonna get a second screw here just to fix it when we're really happy with our location. It's perfect. Now if you come straight on that with the...
That's a good tip. I mean, that way it allows one person to install and level the boards. Problem is now you've got 2 screw holes in your boards. I mean, obviously he's probably going to back them out once the other 2 sides are attached and use the whichever system he's using, the camo system. But still at the same time, it's still going to leave a couple screw holes there in the face of your boards, which might defeat the purpose.
Now that it's perfectly level, we're just going to tack in the other ends. So now I'm taking some of this really nasty bright colored string and I'm going to run it all the way down. And the idea here is when you lift, it's just like doing a chalk line on a floor. So you've got a fixed point and the other point of that board, which is level. We're going to move this string until it's just barely touching the top of that board. We're not going to be upset with that.
That's a nice process. I like that. And it's another good illustration of a proper use of a string. You see guys that use string a lot of times in a little bit less straightforward ways. I like this. That way the entire string is running down the length of the board and then proceeds past the board, so he knows that this string line, the top of this string line, is going to match the top of that rail across the length of the fence.
The idea here is to try to find one level line, at least do a straight line, and then we're going to stagger our joints. And that'll help us to keep things nice and tight and square, so that if we have a board that has a warp, it'll be easy to identify and we'll know where to fix it, instead of just slowly bending the whole fence up, which is what happens if you try to start here and work your way down. So now we've got to get these boards installed. Okay. So we set our posts approximately 6 feet apart. Approximately because we cheated, we intentionally made it just a couple inches shy. And the reason I did that is twofold. One, a lot of the times when you're buying the lumber for the fence, there'll be splits in the end of the board. And we didn't want to have that ugliness, so we wanted to have the ability to cut them down to make them pretty. And 2, because we want to stagger our joints, we don't have the luxury of finding a post that's just a little bit off center as far as our midpoint on the hole. We're on a big slope, we're digging into clay, we might find rocks, there's a lot of variables. So by intentionally planting a little bit shy, we can sacrifice cutting the wood, lose a couple inches on every 12-foot board. It's not going to increase your cost of production that much, but it is going to give you a little bit of mercy room when you're building your fence, so you don't run into a problem that you have to get creative problem solving and wreck it.
So that's a good tip too. So instead of using like a 6-foot center to center, he went a little bit shy of that. A lot of times when you're buying lumber, either 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, whichever length, they're rarely all the same length. Some are 6 foot, some are 5'11", some are 6'2". So by shortening the distance of his post, he's making sure he's going to have to cut every 2x4, but he's making sure that he's never going to have to go buy a longer 2x4 or 2x6 in this case to fit his project. I also like that he spaced the post 6 feet apart. In a 6-foot privacy fence, you'd see them 8 foot or less, which is the standard. But since it's a taller fence, he went ahead and spaced them 6 feet apart, giving this even more, the wood posts giving them even more structure. The more posts you have in the line of the fence, the stronger the fence is going to be.
So our board to the center is 141 inches and a half. And you'll see that the end of the board usually takes a dark stain. Here I got an ugly knot. I got a sticker with a staple. All these things that I just don't want to have to contend with when I'm building my fence. Get a nice clean cut. Now one other thing that I know that the end of this board is square.
So it looks like, just looking at this, he's using pre-stained lumber. You can tell that end cut is quite a bit lighter color than the rest of the picket, or rest of the board. I wonder if he's going to stain that edge to make sure that it's a completely stained board. Make sure that there's no areas for moisture to wick in.
So we've marked off the position of our 4x4 posts. Like I mentioned, I just set the camo in there, lock it in place, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pre-drill the hole. I can't remove the fastener. The reason being, these screws are very unique. They do not have a tip. they're just cut off with a cutter in the assembly line. And the reason for that is that this is designed to bore through the wood, come really ugly like. And what that does is it keeps the wood from splitting. So when you're near the end of a piece of wood and you try to drive a regular screw, you'll find the wood will split on that screw line. So the trick for carpenters is we'd put the screw there and we'd go in reverse and drill it a little bit, and then we go forward, it won't split. But this screw is designed to eliminate that problem, so I can drive the screw right on the edge. No problem. So before I put this board up, now that I've got the holes pre-drilled, I can drive it in easy.
So that's interesting. I thought he was going to use that tool to actually install the screws in place. So he's using it before he mounts the board, pre-drilling it. Certainly one way to do it, and it probably makes it easier to mount, to be honest.
So when you're working alone as a DIYer, you want to have these in place, pre-drilled, with the screws mounted, ready to go before you lift that board up. Because I'll tell you, when you get it in that sweet spot and you're right on that level string, you're going to want to drive that screw right away. You don't want to hesitate. So here we go, we lift up our board. Let's get it flipped over. Now, this is not that tricky. Eyeball, we can find the top of that string. Here we are. We're gonna lift it right up to the top of the string here. There's my sweet spot.
You know, I haven't used this system before, the camo system or the hidden fastener system. I would wonder how strong that is. I mean, it sounds like he's a carpenter, so he knows what he's doing, but just to a guy that hasn't used this system, isn't familiar, it doesn't look like this would be as structurally sound as, you know, face fastening the screws through the board. So right now you're only grabbing the corner of that board. It'd make me wonder how strong it is. I mean, with a deck, you're not worried about the boards peeling off. The deck boards are sitting on top of structure. Really, you're worried about them coming up or moving. With a fence, you're really worried about them. I mean, they've got vertical pressure pulling them down along with horizontal pressure when the wind blows. I wonder how long-term the solution would be.
Of course, my screw is all set and ready to go. Now, that gets buried on a 45-degree angle. We've already identified the crown of the wood, so this is not going to be a problem. Our wood isn't going to split around on us. You can see how the head is completely buried. So it looks like a lot of work getting it set up, but once it's set up, it goes in pretty quick. So the camo system is designed for deck boards. Our horizontal fence, because when you buy the lumber, it usually comes with too much moisture and it takes a few weeks to dry, it'll shrink a little bit on us, leaving some gaps. So we're doing both sides of our neighbor's fence line, so we're gonna adjust which side of the line goes where so that there's no direct line through, okay? But because of this, our ability to put the screw in advance is diminished. So you just take a nail punch, give that screw somewhere to start, and then you can drive it in. Problem solved. So basically, in order to finish this fence, all we have to do is exactly the same thing we've just done 50 or 60 times, and we should be good. So that concludes the information. Make sure that you keep an eye out, subscribe to our channel. We're gonna have the whole project finished and you can watch it then. Like us if you like us, share if you like to share, and we'll see you again soon.
So that was an interesting video. It was kind of looked like it was actually just a setup video to a larger project. Horizontal fences are a big deal right now in the fencing industry, and this is certainly one way to install it. You'd want to decide for yourself. I'd want to research more into the screw system to see, you know, the strength of those screws, if they stand up to a vertical, you know, horizontal fence, a vertical standing fence, as opposed to just a horizontal deck. But yeah, certainly one way to do it. Well, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to our most recent positive reaction video. For now, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors.